My husband, before we ever started a business in Marshall, traveled. He was a troubleshooter for craft cream, and everywhere he went, he'd meet up with guys out on the road. That's the way marketing was done in those days. Guys calling on people and selling and delivering. And so these guys kept telling him about this dog, and my husband was a Missourian. He said, I don't believe that. And so they said, well, it's true. So my husband decided he'd just come to Marshall, find out for himself about that. And when he did, he said he went in and registered, and he said Jim just lay nonchalantly along the desk. And after he got registered, Mr. Van Arsdale said, Jim, do you think you could find the car this man drove? My husband said that dog went out the door of that hotel, turned and went probably a half block up to the town square corner, and turned and went west down the street, probably a third or better of the way. He went directly to my husband's car and put his foot on it. My husband said, I'm telling you, he said, I had prickles in the back of my neck. I just couldn't believe that. But that's the closest encounter I had with a dog. It was just through him. When I came to Marshall, the dog had been dead for 8 years, so the story was 60 years old. It never appeared in the annals of the town, and I am a historian. In fact, I belong to the Historical Society here. After the kids graduated, and further along even than that, I'd say probably another 15 years anyway, I thought, you know, something should be done about Jim. And so I decided what I would do would be to make a tape telling the story of Jim from the time he was a puppy until his burial in Marshall Cemetery. I knew that it was such an unbelievable story that I almost had to have witnesses who saw what the dog had done. And so I found 18 people who were willing to come on tape and tell their story. After people found out what I was doing, I had stories just roll out, you know, that I could have used had I known about. And about the time I got the tape made, the state of Missouri decided that the county of Saline was not drawing any tourist money whatsoever. And so they thought, there surely is something there that would be a tourist attraction. So they appropriated $3,000 and sent this woman and man to make a study. They picked up the tape and took it with them. And the next day they came back and they said, why in the world hasn't something been done about this dog? That dog could have been drawing money for 60 years. And so they said he should be commemorated in some way. Well, I thought, what better place to commemorate than in the spot where he lived while he was in Marshall. And that was the corner lot where the garden is now situated. It had been a very fine hotel when Mr. Van Arsdale ran the hotel, but it had fallen, into disrepair like buildings would, and the city had knocked it down, and this was an old rock-strewn lot. So I went to the mayor and to the city administrator or manager, and I told them what I had in prospect, and they said, "Oh, go ahead. I think that's wonderful. Go ahead." I knew from the start that I was going to have to raise at least $80,000. And I worked, and that was a whole separate set of bookkeeping, even from my regular begging that I had done early on. If I had not sold brick, I probably would not have, accomplished that much money, but I did. And incidentally, there is a brick there very appropriately on the little inset where Jim statue is of the man who wrote the book. He was a graduate of the Missouri School of Journalism, and he had written this book very matter-of-factly. He took it to the editor, and he said, "This is a story that should be made into a children's story." So he didn't like it at all, but he thought he'd try. And his daughter said, "I still see my mother and daddy at night sitting in there at our library table," which everybody had in those days, in the living room, rewriting the story. It took me the better part of probably 2 years to raise this much money, but I got it done and got it in the annals of the town, which was what I originally started out to do. We had the grand opening, and I unveiled the statue in the process, and I had fixed a day-long program of entertainment to bring people to town. It was a very successful day, I thought, and so did other people. And I was glad, certainly very glad, that I had worked that hard and had accomplished this. The day of the grand opening, a reporter I liked very well from the Kansas City Star came to Marshall, and he wrote a very interesting story about the garden and about the fact, would you believe an over 70-year-old woman did this? And it was on the front page of the Kansas City Star. I had all of these newspapers call me and talk to me. I talked to people from coast to coast. One day, the phone rang, and it was a woman from Burbank, California. She said, "I'm fascinated with this story." And I said, "Well, where did you hear about it?" She said, "Well, I read about it in our local paper." As it happened, the Kansas City Star at that time belonged to a company that did print all over the U.S. She said, "I am the woman who books programs for Animal Planet." And she said, I wonder if you could collect some witnesses to this. She said, we don't send out crews, but she said, I'm going to make an exception here. And she did.
Marshall, Missouri. This sleepy little village 83 miles east of Kansas City is famous as the unlikely hometown of one of the great psychics of the last 100 years.
It was just the start of my hearing from magazines, especially pet magazines. And also, in a short time, I had a call from Pennsylvania, and it was a man who does programs for the History Channel on TV. And so he said, I'd like to come do a story. And I said, I'd be glad to have you. Of course, I thought anything that would push the story of Jim and spread it was for the good, of course. The last thing the man asked me was, where do you think Jim got his power? Who was I to know where he got his power? I said, I don't know. But I said, I will be content to give you the answer that Mr. Van Arsdale gave people, that it was a God-given power. He was psychic somehow or other. Who can account for that? You know, it just spread and spread and spread. It just was unbelievable to me. So, of course, all of these little stories about Jim and what they'd seen perform sifted back to me. I know that the story will continue to live and grow with every chance we get to promote it. We have continued to draw money from 6 or 8 websites. We still have a Jim the Wonder Dog committee, and we have a place on the west side of our square, classics there, the stocks, different memorabilia to raise money for Jim. And we sold things from coast to coast and had them shipped out. We have cups, we have t-shirts, we have sweatshirts, we have tapes, we have the book of Jim, the rewrite. I'm very proud of what I've done, and I feel that had I not done it, Jim's story would have died. It'd be gone now. All but 2 of the people on the original tape are dead now. So I think I have revived the story, and it is a beautiful garden. When it's at its prime, that's a pretty place, and you'd be surprised how many people will go get an ice cream cone or something and come and sit in the gazebo and eat and enjoy the garden. And that just pleases us very much. And I've had one wedding performance there, and a number of the high school class kids, they allow them to choose where they want their senior picture to be made. And a number of them have chosen the garden. So Jim lives on. He's flying high, even if I'm not.
word about Jim, the wonder dog, spread, people started coming to see for themselves if the things that Jim was said to be able to do were true. Well, as it turns out, he not only understood English, but also Greek and a little Italian. He could read people's minds and even predict the future. He gave exhibitions all over the state. College professors tried to prove him the fake, but nobody ever put a dent in Jim's reputation. Jim, wonderful Jim, there's never been another dog smarter than him. Hey, all you dogs out there, let's hit for Jim. Well, Jim finally died in 1937. Went right on up the English side of heaven. Met up with Eugene's ghost, the Candy Kid. Sam asked the city to let Jim be buried with the other folks down in the human cemetery. But the city fathers ruled that couldn't be done. So Sam planted Jim just across the fence and put up a right nice monument that anyone can go and see to this very day. And it's interesting, over the years since then, the cemetery's grown and had to expand. Now Jim's right in there with the rest of the humans. Jim, wonderful Jim, never been another dog smarter than him. Hey, all you dogs out there, let's hit for Jim. So the next time you hear about man's best friend, think about that wonderful dog named Jim. And remember, dogs can be just as smart as some humans are. Done.